Blog Talk Radio.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Jets Radio. This is one of your hosts, the only one of your hosts, Tyson Rauch. We are doing a special Saturday interview with Connor Rogers, talking some Jets draft, because less than a week away. We got some lot to talk about, got some rumors, and Connor is the guy because he's the man of the people. He's a big Jets fan and everything else, an excellent draft analyst, Stick to Football podcast. You got it all, man. Connor, what's up, dude?
Tyson, thanks for having me, man. It's always good to talk to you, and I feel like our annual chat around the Jets and their draft happens this time every year now for the last couple of years, so it's good to get it in.
You know what's funny, Connor? I was just talking to you before, and it's like, I feel like as Jets fans, we've been talking about drafts since like mid-season, so it's almost like a lot of this is already exhausted, it feels like, doesn't it? Yeah,
and something else I was saying to you before the show, too, is that not much has really changed about the players we talk about with the Jets in round one. It's really been, the top tackles. There's 4 of them. And then CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and a little bit of Henry Ruggs. But it seems like outside of those 7 players, nothing has really changed with this pick. We're just sitting here waiting to see who falls and who they take.
Yeah, so before we even go into the draft, I got a lot to talk to you about, man, because I've been dying to talk to you. I follow all your stuff. I mean, you're phenomenal, man. You give honest assessments, you give insight, behind-the-scenes stuff on the Jets, which is always great. What are your thoughts on free agency in terms of the offensive line? As a lot of us expected a lot more, and the Jets went to a different approach with more trying to get better value for their buck. What was your take on the offensive line and free agency with the Jets?
I thought it was a little mediocre, to be honest with you. It wasn't anything that was groundbreaking. It also wasn't a complete flop. I think when you look at it, is this unit better as we talk right now on the Saturday before the NFL draft? I do not think it's better. I think they significantly upgraded at center. I really like Connor McGovern as a player. When you get a player that's kind of a top 10 pass protector at that position in the NFL, when you really had a bottom-tier pass protector at the position last year, that's going to make a big difference on your 22, soon-to-be 23-year-old quarterback. So that was really, really well done after it felt like they kind of missed on Graham Glasgow. So, and of course, it would have been great to get both of those guys because they had holes. Let's be real, Tyson. It felt like they had holes at every spot on the offensive line. Now, when you look at left tackle, the thing I've been very, very honest about when I do shows is that I think George Fant is a downgrade from what Calvin Beachum was last year. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you Calvin Beachum is this all-world tackle, but I think he was far from the main problem on the offensive line. So now with Fant, I think he's way more athletic as a run blocker, so he'll get that side of things going if they truly want to run an outside zone scheme. But in terms of his, pass protection ability, his ability to anchor against power, I think that's something that's going to be a big problem if it comes down to him starting. So it felt like they didn't get better at the tackle position. That's kind of a key issue. I'm very curious to see how Chuma Edoga plays this year because his games at right tackle last year were decent. His games at left tackle when Beachum got hurt were miserable. And then when you look at it, it's good that Alex Lewis is back. We'll see what they get from Greg Van Routen, Brian Winters if they don't cut him. It's kind of just adding a ton of bodies to this offensive line and hoping it gets better. And I think when you come out of the free agency market, I thought Jack Conklin, while he wasn't, this all-pro player necessarily, I thought the number that the Browns paid for him was actually pretty low. So it felt a little odd that they weren't in that market on such a short-term deal for what really would have been a plug-and-play right tackle. And I think when you look at it, and we didn't even get into the wide receiver group yet, losing Robbie Anderson was a bit of a blow. There's just a lot of things that felt kind of like, okay, how much better is this team going into the draft? The offense is not, and that was the most important thing for Sam Darnold. So I really like the McGovern signing. I'm betting on them getting a good tackle at 11 in this draft. So the offensive line overall should look better next year, but I just don't think they did anything, outstanding that makes this a competitor in the AFC East next year.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, to be completely honest with you, that's what kind of bothered me. I was sitting here all right, the entire goal of this offseason is upgrade the offense. Offensive line, build around Sam, which we've talked about since he's been here. And it's and now it seems like we're in the season where everybody's justifying every move from Joe Douglas because he's Joe Douglas. Well, he did this, he's got to know what he's doing. And I'm like, listen, sometimes he can make mistakes or he can be taking a different approach that we don't agree with. And, I don't drink the juice, man. I just call like I see it. I'm not overly impressed by this. I still have legitimate concerns. And then for them to come out and say, we're gonna build around Sam in the draft, well, the free agency is also an option, too. The draft's unknown. Like, you don't know what you're getting. Hopefully in free agency you do know. And I agree with you about Beachum. Now it's like, hopefully you get a guy at 11 if they go that route. And maybe I'd still bring back Beachum. I try to, or even Jason Peters. Like, you can't have enough guys, dude, especially with the guys they signed aren't proven, and some of them are injury-prone.
Yeah, and what I'm interested in, too, is that if you brought back Beachum and he played left tackle, and this is why kind of the Fant signing just doesn't really add up to me at $10 million. I know it's a one-year deal, when you dig into it, but if you sign Beachum and you say, hey, you're going to play left tackle before the draft, this draft is very interesting to me, Tyson, because there's 4 top tackles, right? And you look at it and you go, okay, well, when we look at this draft, Andrew Thomas played right tackle as a true freshman where he was on the freshman All-American team, and then left tackle for 2 years. So Andrew Thomas can play on either side. That's it's great that he could do that. Mekhi Becton, he played left tackle this year. Tristan Wirfs took the majority of his snaps at right tackle. Jedrick Wills at Alabama only played right tackle. And I talked to Wills, and he said he's training to play on the left side, and Wirfs has a little bit of experience on the left side, but it's not a slam dunk that you're getting a guy that's going to step in with no OTAs, no rookie minicamp, to play left tackle from day one. So I think it's risky. I really do. And Udoka's a guy that I'm hoping it works out. I'm not betting on it to work out. And it just feels like they're kind of still rolling the dice here. And I'm not playing that game anymore with Sam Darnold. Like, if you didn't want to, pay Jadeveon Clowney, you didn't want to pay Dante Fowler, you didn't want to make all these big money additions on defense, it is what it is, right? You got the Sear on a one-year deal. Jordan Jenkins and Brian Poole's deals are very team-friendly. That unit will be decent. They still don't have an edge pass rusher, but it's a well-coached unit, and they have some players already in place on that unit. But the offense, it just felt like a little too patient for me. I liked the Robbie Anderson contract for the Panthers. I'm a little confused why the Jets couldn't go to that number for a guy that was very vocal about wanting to be back with the team. Brashad Perriman is not a lock. Sure, the last 5 games on the Bucs in an offensive system that was very friendly to his skill set with Bruce Arians, it made the numbers look good. The guy was almost out of the league 2 years ago. So I'm just very mixed on the entire thing, and I got a lot of negative reactions on Twitter when I said that right now this unit is arguably worse for Sam Darnold, and I'm hoping – this is the problem, Tyson. As a guy that evaluates players and looks at the draft from a lens all year round for a living, if I was in the GM chair, I'd want to make my life easier and go into the draft with flexibility, and I don't think this team has done that. I think you're going into 11. I would have loved to take CeeDee Lamb because I think he's going to be a top 5, top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. They can't do that. They need to take a tackle, and then you're going into the second round, and maybe you'd like to get a corner or you'd like to get an edge rusher. They can't do that either because then you don't have any wide receivers. So it's pigeonholing yourself, and it's very dangerous GMing. But Joe Douglas is on a 6-year deal, and I think he's going to be patient. And, us Jets fans that haven't seen a playoff team in 10 years, we're out of patience. So it's just 2 totally different lenses on this entire thing.
Dude, I'm glad you said that because I had the same approach, and I got roasted on Twitter. I get roasted everywhere. They're like, you're negative, and you're not doing this, you're not doing that. I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's like, look at how they went about things. And I don't agree with most of it. And I'm like, all right, I'll try to justify some things. Like, I like McGovern. The whole Robbie Anderson thing just pisses me off. It makes no sense at all because if you're going to take this approach, to me, if you don't trade him last year, you make a commitment to re-signing him this year. That's kind of like, that's what you do. You don't let him walk for no compensation, and then it's basically over $2 million. And it seems to me like Joe Douglas was trying to play hardball with everybody, like, new sheriff in town, I'm negotiating contracts my way, it's my way or the highway, not realizing, listen, man, you're the Jets. Like, you're not it's not a desirable location, man. It's like Adam Gase on a losing team. Like, what are you selling here?
It did feel that way, and it kind of made me wonder, number one, Mike McCagnon got pushed around a lot in negotiations where maybe Joe Douglas was setting a statement or sending a statement out in his first, offseason with the Jets as GM where you look at it and he's going, okay, this is a new time. And it worked a couple times, right? The Brian Poole deal. That's a really team-friendly deal. I actually think he's a guy you'd want under contract for 2 years, but I can't speak to how those negotiations went. Jordan Jenkins, that's a great deal. Pierre Desir, that's a great deal. That's great GMing. But on the flip side, didn't it feel like everything went the opposite way on the offensive side of the ball? Like, They had, they were interested in Conklin, and, there's reports varying the degrees of interest, but they were not willing, to go the extra mile for a lot of guys, and it didn't bite them a lot on defense. It bit them a lot on offense. It really did. When you look at it, it's just you didn't get Robbie Anderson back, and all Adam Gase does in these press conferences is talks about needing speed. Well, you lost what I think is quietly one of the better deep threats, true deep threats in the NFL. He hasn't had a ton of help at the quarterback position where you look at it and can see the numbers, but in terms of being a guy on film that's beating people down the field, he's done it. So now you go into the draft, you need speed again. I'm not betting on Perriman. So I'm very interested in the entire thing, but Tyson, the most important takeaway I had is it felt like Joe Douglas went about this offseason in free agency with the mindset of, hey, I might be hiring a coach next year, and he's going to have a clean slate of cap space, and it'll be more convincing, it'll be more attractive to come here and be a coach like that, knowing you could build the roster the way you want. He just didn't tie himself into any long-term deals besides McGovern.
Yeah, to me it was like, I completely agree with you. To me it's like he used this year to get rid of contracts he didn't want, find some Band-Aids and stopgaps, till next year we can get rid of other contracts he doesn't want, like Henry Anderson, Le'Veon Bell, and everybody else. It's like it's almost like a wash year. It's kind of like let's hold the four guys. We'll do it because they're going to be in the same boat next year. All these one-year contracts, guess what? Those are holes next year. So that's why, I would have, like you said, you don't know negotiations. I would have given Poole a 2-year deal. Try to give Jordan Jenkins a little bit more, even this year. Try to at least get 2-year deals so you don't have the same. We're going to be in the same exact boat next year. A ton of cap space and a ton of holes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it felt like, honestly. When you look at it, Le'Veon will be off the books, and I'm sure that's something they'll be happy about. I think it's $11.5 million, and I really like Le'Veon, and hope he has a really good year, a bounce-back year, because I don't really understand any of the negative, side of him from, whether it's the coach or all those things. I think Le'Veon's been not only a stand-up player since he's gotten here, but he's made the most of what he's working with. So, yeah, that's how it felt. I mean, all the one-year deals, and they're going to have a clean slate next year. And, something that we have to keep in mind as fans is that Woody Johnson will be coming back as ambassador to the UK. It sounds like he comes back whether Trump gets reelected or not. So we know Woody pretty well. He's an impulsive guy, and he's going to kick little brother aside, and that's my honest opinion. And Woody might say, hey, I think it's, this is an embarrassment. It's a chance for him to play hero. If things don't go well with Gase this year, who knows? Maybe the Jets shock me. They win 9-10 games. And I want to see how the draft goes. And, but right now it just kind of feels like we know the end of this as Jets fans. Yep. I think we're experienced enough to see how this all ends. And my honest prediction is that, Woody comes back. Joe Douglas is on that 6-year deal, so he's not going anywhere, which is good. And Joe will get to hire his own head coach, and here we go again. It's once again, we're starting from step one.
No, I completely agree. Once again, talking to Connor Rogers. If you're not following him on Twitter or at Stick to Football, I don't know what you're doing. It's Connor, CONNORJ Rogers. Connor, before we go into the draft, we got to talk about the number one topic right now, which I know you talked about endlessly and I've talked about endlessly, is Jamal Adams. And this situation should not surprise anybody. We all knew it was going to come to this. It is what it is. Like, and you could see both sides of it, man. Like, Jamal Adams is an emerging star in the NFL. He's done everything the right way. He's improved every year. He's an all-pro. He's outplayed his contract. He wants his money. The Jets have praised him, said they want to make him a Jet for life, and now they're not paying him because they have other things to worry about, and they don't have to. They have some leverage there, and now he's not going to go to voluntary workouts, which is fine. But you could see this could lead into a potential holdout, in training camp, whenever training camp is. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, well, okay, so it's not shocking, number one. I felt like the Schefter news, maybe the thing that was eye-opening about it is that he's like a name to watch during the draft to be traded. I thought that was interesting to me because what I don't personally understand, Tyson, let's start with what I know about the situation. The situation I understand is that the ownership does not want to see Jamal Adams go anywhere. Christopher Johnson does not want to see Jamal Adams go anywhere. There's a little bit of regret of how Darrelle Revis's first tenure ended with the Jets, and that's obviously from the Woody side. But they felt like they fumbled that entire thing, and it's very believable because of how much, they overpaid to bring him back, Revis. And that wasn't really a Maccagnan decision. That was an ownership decision. This is always the problem with the Jets. They are running a plan until owners step in and say, hey, do this. So a couple of examples of those are when Revis came back to the Jets, that was an owner decision. They said pay him whatever he wants to come back because they felt like they fumbled how things ended the first time. So they overpaid for Revis to come back. He had one good year here when he came back, and then it was a bad contract. It's as simple as that. Le'Veon Bell was an ownership decision. They wanted a star. They wanted a splash. They felt like Le'Veon, was the guy to do that, and Adam Gase, did not want him, quite simply. I mean, to be honest with you, and he tells everyone that'll listen, and then that's how it leaks out. So this, once again, I think my gut feeling is that it could have some ownership interference because it sounds like Joe Douglas picked up the phone during the trade deadline, which is kind of how you're taught to operate when you're an executive or a scout in football. Tyson, what if somebody calls you and says, hey, we'll give you our 3 1s for Jamal Adams?
Yep.
I mean, I love Jamal Adams, right? Jamal Adams is fiery. He's a great player. I think he's the best safety in football right now. He's young. I think he's 24 still. He's everything you want. But the Jets aren't any good. And the Jets have needs at corner. They have needs at edge pass rusher. They have needs at tackle. Those are probably 3 of the most non-quarterback positions in football. You'd probably take the 3 1s. Now, nobody is calling the Jets and offering 3 1s, but I'm just showing you how the GM is taught to operate. Now, I also wonder if the front office wants to pay a safety $16 million a year. And that's kind of how I sit and look at it, because I think it was Eddie Jackson that got the most recent safety contract. And you do a little quick math, and you go, okay, well, this is what Jamal will probably ask for. And that's all. I'm so torn on this, because here's the fan side of it and how I feel. You don't want to lose your great players. It's a bad look to just let your great players come and go, and you're a losing franchise and all those things. And that would suck. And you don't want to lose Jamal Adams. From the emotionless team builder side of it, we have a 22-year-old quarterback that I think all of us believe can be a superstar. And he has no reliable starting tackle, not a lot at receiver, and really not a lot of draft capital to solve all of those things. So I think that's the side of Joe Douglas sitting there going, well, here's the one guy I can move for pieces, real pieces, a first-round pick, maybe a second and fourth-round pick as well. And he's pondering it. But once again, I don't know if owners will step in and say, hey, because as far as I know, Joe Douglas does not have the power to answer the phone and go, oh, I like that deal, you got Jamal. As far as I know, he needs to clear that with the owners. So you kind of see how this is a torn situation. Each side has how they feel, and I'd be lying to you if I sat here and said I know exactly what's going to happen, because this happened to me during the season. I knew that, Joe Douglas and everyone didn't seem thrilled with the job Adam Gase did, and probably would have loved to pick his own head coach, but the owners would never let him do that after 1 year. So what's going to happen with Jamal Adams? It can go a couple different ways.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'm in the same boat. We were just talking about this earlier. It's like, for me, right now the Jets are a mess. They're not a winning product. They can't market themselves. They can't sell themselves. And to me, their only marketing tool is Jamal Adams, because Sam Darnold's still unknown. We all believe in him, but he's not that flamboyant, boisterous guy. He doesn't really attract a lot of attention. He's like Jamal Adams is your leader on and off the field. He's your marketing tool. The players across the league love him. So for me personally, and this is just a fan that drinks beer, I'm like, you know what? I could see Chris Johnson saying, we're not trading him. I don't care what package it is, because we can't. We don't want to have the backlash from the fans saying, what are you doing? That's our guy. That's our president. And that's not, and I could see it from a business perspective, because the NFL is, it's a business. It's about money. But then it's like Joe Douglas is like, that's the last thing you want for your general manager, dude. It's like you bring him in here because of his resume, his ability to analyze talent and rebuild your team and do all these things. And then if your ownership's going to hold you back for doing something, or your coach for that matter, it's like, dude, this is what got us in this place to begin with.
Yeah, you can't operate that way. Now, another thing that I'm interested in not knowing if he has the green light to trade him or not, it wouldn't happen right now because there has to be a player on the board with the pick you're being offered for you to make the trade, right? Like, this is the problem. A lot of people are out there saying, oh, well, 17 from Dallas, because all we hear with Jamal Adams is the Cowboys over and over again, which I don't even really think is a logical fit in terms of the lack of cap space they have and all of those things. But 17 at Dallas, you can't get on the phone today and say, hey, you got Jamal for pick 17 and your third rounder, because nobody knows who's going to be there at 17. It's a weird draft where I keep telling people I think the talent dips off after pick 15. I think the Jets need to be in a spot where, say at 11, you get a tackle that you really like, and everyone's like, thank God we have left tackle figured out. And then, oh, wow, Jerry Jeudy fell to 17. We didn't see this coming, and the Cowboys are calling you and saying, hey, we'll give you 17 and our third, and you get back on the phone and say, no, we need your second. And then it gets done, you're swapping. You know what I mean? You're not swapping Jamal Adams for a number. You're swapping Jamal Adams for what you believe is a star in Jerry Jeudy, and it's just an example, and more ammo. So I think that's another reason why it doesn't make sense for this to happen until the draft, if it does. I'm very skeptical that anything happens. I really am. But it's just another way to explain why, there just hasn't been any movement on something like this.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Like I said, you can see both sides of it, but, we'll see how it plays out. And then as you look at this number 11 pick, which I feel like we've been talking about for 3 decades, everybody knows all the stories about all the offensive linemen. But my question to you, I guess the first one is, how does this story about Becton, does that impact anything? Would that scare Joe Douglas away at all with the failed drug test?
I wonder. I know Joe Douglas is hell-bent on drafting high-character players. Now, everything I've heard is that there aren't really character concerns with Becton. Like, he's not a bad guy or anything like that. I think him keeping his weight in check is a question. So that's, what is the drug? You know what I mean? Like, smoking weed in the NFL doesn't really matter anymore. So, if it's that, you're like, okay, whatever. But if it's what if it's a substance that kept his weight down? I'm just spitballing things. It's hard to gather how this impacts him without knowing a lot of details. Now, what I will say is, as an evaluator, I have Becton as the 4th offensive tackle because I think he has the lowest floor. Now, but could a team take a gamble on Becton and they get a 5-time All-Pro and this guy that's an amazing tackle? Totally. But for the Jets, I don't think you could take that risk. When I look at Andrew Thomas, who started 3 years in the SEC at an extremely high level and is just so pro-ready, Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, and Jedrick Wills from Alabama. I feel like I know what I'm getting with those guys, where coming out of Louisville's offense, you're not positive that Becton will transform into an elite pass protector. You're hoping. And even if he does, you don't have the time to develop him because we don't even know if there's going to be training camp on time, let alone rookie minicamp and OTAs. So I do like Becton. It's fun to watch him walk defenders to the sideline. I think he'd be a really good run blocker right away. But I think he is by far the riskiest of the bunch, even before the drug test issue came out, which should not affect his stock too much.
Now, do you think, my biggest fear is that there's a run on offensive linemen, and at 11, the Jets are just sitting there with all right, we have to go receiver because we're unable to get any one of these 4. Is that a possibility or no?
I think so. I think they're prepared for it, and I think when you look at the George Fant signing, Tyson, if they fell, say they were picking 4th in this draft, like the Giants are, I don't even think they would have signed a guy like Fant, because I think they would have been like, hey, we get our pick of the litter here. We love this tackle. Say it's Jedrick Wills. He's going to be our starter next year, and we're good. I think George Fant was insurance in case things go completely wrong. And when you look at it, I think the Giants are going to take an offensive lineman. I really do. And then, Cleveland, it makes sense for them to take one at 10. The X factor that's scary is the Dolphins at 5. If they don't confident in the quarterbacks there, they need to tackle at both sides. Do they just take one at 5 and say, hey, we'll take Jordan Love later in the first round? That's what makes me wonder. So, there's a chance that when you look at it, that the Jets do have to take a wide receiver, but I think it's a very, very small one. I think one of the 4 guys will be there.
And one of the arguments we get on the show all the time is where it's you look at the 4th, say, in theory, the 4th best offensive tackle versus the number 1 receiver, number 2 receiver in the draft. like, what's your comparison there? And then it's like, what's the drop-off after the top 4 tackles to, like, 5, 6, 7, and 8? Like how would you evaluate that? So if you're saying, listen, you can say you can get, I don't know, say Andrew Thomas, or no, we wouldn't say, we'll say you get Becton at 11 or CeeDee Lamb or Judy. How do you prioritize what your player is there? The 4th best guy gets, like, your number 1 ranked receiver.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Very difficult. Now, I think the Jets will go with Becton. I would go with CeeDee Lamb. I made a Jets big board to kind of show it, and for me, it would be Jedrick Wills, number 1, Tristan Wirfs, number 2, Andrew Thomas, number 3. Okay with any of those 3 guys. Plug and play, great players, high character, tons of production at the college level. Then I go CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy at 4 and 5 because, I feel very good about both of them being number 1 wide receivers. And then Becton because, once again, the bust potential is there. And let's not sugarcoat it. This is a team that needs a number 1 wide receiver. So it's not like you're taking a luxury pick by taking CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy over Becton. So that would be it for me. I don't think they go that route at all, but it's what I would do. Now, then you're sitting there going, well, what the hell do we do now at tackle? It gets, I would call Washington and see what's going on with Trent Williams once again. But you're letting me sit in the GM chair, and I'm telling you how I would operate. I don't know what Joe Douglas, how he's operating with all of this. But my plan would be, see what tackle falls. If the top 3 aren't there, I take CeeDee Lamb every time. It's very simple to me. I think he's phenomenal, and I would really look into trading for Trent Williams. And some people come back at us and go, well, "What about cap space?" I mean, cap space is the easiest thing to make in the world. Tremaine Johnson's money is coming off the books a little bit after June 1st. Brian Winters can be cut. I wouldn't cut Avery Williamson, but he's a guy that the money could be freed up or reduced if you needed it to. So you look at things like that. There's wiggle room here. So I would, that would be my plan personally. But I think the Jets simply take a tackle at 11.
Okay, so then if you do that, my next concern, you probably have a lot of concerns here, is you look at tackle at 11, and then that wait till 48 is so friggin' long. And then my next fear is a run on wide receivers. Could you see that happening?
I think someone good will be there at 48. And I know it's crazy to be that confident, but I feel pretty good that, like, Michael Pittman or KJ Hamler or Brandon Ayuk, I think one of those guys will be there at 48 where you sit tight, you stay patient, you're comfortable with one of those guys there, that you're going to get one. So 48 is far from my worries, honestly. I think it's a good slot. Would you love to be at 40 or 38? Of course you would, but you're probably not going to move up. Now, if you love someone, like say they love Michael Pittman, which I do. I think he's the 5th best wide receiver in the class. And you call, I don't know, let's get the Texans at 40, who clearly need more ammo. And you sit there and you go, hey, we're at 48. Let's jump up to 40. You can have 48 and our 4th rounder. I would do that. I would go up and get Pittman in that scenario. It's all about how it plays out. But I think 48 is a safe spot to be in that you're going to get someone you like.
Okay, so then if you get that, say offensive line 1st round, wide receiver 2nd round, those 2 third-round picks, to me, I'm still looking wide receiver because I just want weapons for Sam. So would you do the same thing?
Yes, I would. At one of the third-round picks, I would take Lynn Bowden from Kentucky. Get a playmaker with the ball in his hands, a great character fit, a guy that could really be your returner right away as well. And then with the other third-rounder, you're looking at the cornerback board, you're looking at the edge pass rush board. Bradley Anai comes to mind because he's not a 3-down defender. He's a situational pass rusher right now, but a guy that could, we heard the rumors about them trying to sign Vinnie Curry. I think he would have an impact like that, a situational guy. So I think the Jets' strategy, in my mind, is actually somewhat clear. You're really going very, very offense-heavy. I think they'll look at interior offensive line in the 3rd round, Matt Hennessy, the center from Temple, because remember, you can kick McGovern over to guard if you need to, so you could draft someone like Hennessy to play center. Robert Hunt played right tackle in college. He'll play guard at the next level. So I think they're going to really explore this interior offensive line class, which isn't a great group. It's an okay group. But one of the extra third-rounders, that makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I kind of think the same thing. And even, after the draft, if you have to go after a Marcus Golden or Logan Ryan, whatever else, you can still do that. But if you, looking later on in the draft, I'm absolutely dying for a speed running back, like an explosive guy out of the backfield that, like a Trenton Cannon that can actually play. Like a guy that's just a speed burner. So are there any guys you can see like later on the draft that could be had there as a running back, and would the Jets even consider that?
Yeah, I think so. I talk about Antonio Gibson a lot from Memphis. He's a really good kick returner. He played slot receiver in college, and he played one game at running back. Running back is where the NFL has him. I think he goes late third round, early fourth round, 6'2", 221, 4.39 speed. A really, really impressive running back film and the limited touches he got. He can catch the ball. Obviously, he played receiver for a while, so he could play slot receiver if you needed him to. Versatility is key. I mean, the guy was a big play machine. After listening to you say that, this is your guy. I mean, he's a big play machine. I want to say on like 77 touches last year, I think he scored 14 times. So when you look at it, it's like, okay, one out of every 5 times the guy gets the ball, he scores. So that's insane. Keyshawn Vaughn from Vanderbilt has some juice to his game as a third down running back. I'd like that. Anthony McFarland from Maryland is another late round guy. I think that makes sense, that has some burst. So they're going to be looking to spell Le'Veon Bell and give him some time off the field. And I think the running back on day 3 is going to play some snaps for this football team this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they only have like Josh Adams. They don't really have anything, so they need
not much
there. So it makes, yeah, they need some help. And then obviously we talked about pass rushers probably as long as I've known you, and it's like we never get any of them. And I think based on what we've said, it's like, listen, offensive lineman, wide receiver, corner, running back. Do you see any chance they even try to find an edge in this draft, or it's kind of like, hey, we'll go to Golden or Vinny Curry after it's over?
I think they'll take some swings. I think, there's going to be a couple of guys that they look at later on. Bradley and I in the third round is where it starts for me. I think Kenny Willekes on day 3. I think Josh Uche in the third round makes some sense as a situational guy. Terrell Lewis from Alabama, he was hurt a lot in 2017 and 2018, but he's really, really impressive. And I think they'll kind of steer clear of the injury concern guys, so I don't know how high he'll be on their board, but I think they'll take, remember when they drafted Dylan Donahue, and that pick made no sense because he was older and small school. It really, not a great athlete. It didn't really make a ton of sense. I think they'll take a pass rusher late like they did with Donahue, but rather than the small school production as an older player, they'll look for more upside in an athlete.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, some of these picks have been over the years been doozies. Now, you look at a lot. You're an insider, man. You know a lot about the draft. You know a lot about the teams, the perception around the league. Overall, what is the outsider looking in perception of the New York Jets, do you think?
I think they're a team with a lot of needs. I think that's been the perception. I think they know Joe Douglas will be very patient, and you'll hear the term build through the draft over and over again, of course. So when you look at things like that, that'll be prevalent. But I think most importantly is that, they're a team that they're not going to take a lot of luxury kind of players. They're going to look to build this thing, from the inside out, in the trenches. I guarantee... I really think 2 of the first 4 picks will be on the offensive line. I think the 11 will be a tackle. I think on day 2 they're going to look at the interior offensive line, and then you got to get a receiver in there somewhere. So, the Jets right now, they're a team with a lot of holes. I don't think Adam Gase is very well respected around the league, so the coaching side is not a good reputation, but Joe Douglas is really respected. So I think on that side of things, the Jets are one of those teams right now where they're kind of like 1 foot in and 1 foot out because the future of the coach is so unclear, but the GM's future is very, very steady and consistent where you feel good about that. So they're kind of a team where we're in wait-and-see mode. Like, you want to see what the jump Sam Darnold takes. You want to see what picks Joe Douglas makes sitting in the GM chair, and if he can build this thing like he helped build in Philadelphia. So it's a lot of question marks around this team once again, which is something we're used to. And I think I'll say this, Joe Douglas has a lot of support around the league, and connections matter and they help. So I think for that side of things, the Jets front office for the first time in a long time is very, very well respected.
Yeah, thank God for that. And then if you look at just the draft process alone, it's a virtual draft. Everybody's going to be quarantined in their own offices, at home, whatever like that. Could you see the potential for any kind of challenges with maybe less trades or less activity just due to the setup, the setup that's going to be dealing with?
It's a concern right now. I think when you look at it, time is the concern. When you're fielding calls from a ton of different teams or making calls and getting that information back to the GM, the good thing is the NFL has made it clear that they're willing to stop the clock this year. So what was once a concern won't be as big of a deal. I think teams will be more hesitant to make trades. We've heard Dave Gettleman already say they'd like to move from 4 before the draft, not during it, if they do that. So I think teams are very aware of it, and there might be less movement on day 3 of this thing because it moves so fast. But overall, I think the league is going to be very, very forgiving and understanding of the clock issues early on as everybody's kind of getting used to this first-time method.
And how much will the lack of getting physicals and things like that play into it? Could you see players dropping just due to the uncertainty of the evaluation process?
Yeah, something I was telling my coworker Adam Lefko is that this could be the greatest UDFA class of all time because there's going to be medical gambles teams just don't want to risk on, and some of those guys will check out and be fine, and they'll go on to have long NFL careers after being undrafted, and teams just won't. You're going to see more than ever productive college seniors drafted over upside guys on day 3 because of medical reasons, because of lack of pro day numbers. It's going to hurt the small school guys more than anyone. Guys that got snubbed from the combine. So when you look at it, there's going to be misses, I think, and there's going to be gems. There really is. I think, the teams that have really good area scouts that let them do the UDFA process are going to come out on top. And we see that a lot from, Seattle's been really good at that, I think. I think Baltimore's pretty good at that. And, the Jets, ironically, have actually had some luck in that area. Robbie Anderson was one of those guys. So, when you look at it, there's just going to be players like that slip through the cracks and unfortunately don't hear their name called because of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's the one thing that they said about Joe Douglas was he has an eye for, the undrafted free agents. He just scouts so much and he's so thorough where he has, a vast list of resources for those kind of players. So, you never know. I'm hoping for anything now. I'm looking for positives. Now, I guess one of my last questions for you is, dude, I've known you a long time, and you're just taking off with all your evaluations and your analysis of Bleacher Report and Stick to Football. It's been for you, man. How does this ride been for you just going throughout this whole process?
It's been a blast. I love doing this. I never thought I would get to do this full time. I think when we made Stick to Football at Bleacher Report, it was looked at as, there wasn't a lot of draft podcasts, and I think that helped us a lot, being, one of the first to entry. It felt like it was us and Move the Sticks who do a great job at NFL Network. And I think for me, it's just been, obviously it's been a lot of fun having my opinions heard. When I was younger, I wanted to go into scouting, and unfortunately I didn't have NFL connections to really find a way into the league. And by the time an opportunity like that even came, on my plate, I felt like I was actually finally advancing in media, where I said, I'm not going to start from the bottom, as like an intern or anything like that. So I was like, I'm very, comfortable and happy with what I do. And number one, I love what I do, and I think it's phenomenal. I could just enjoy it. And, I would always think about going into the NFL if the right opportunity came along, and I think that'd be really exciting. But I think kind of sitting in the GM chair from the media side has its perks. Is it hard for me to rank 200 players after watching, 300 plus a year? Yeah, it's very difficult. But at the same time, I get full autonomy over my rankings, right? I don't have to sit there and argue or beg to move a guy up into the top 10. And, there's times where I'm right and there's times where I'm wrong. A lot of people were not thrilled with me when I had Ed Oliver over Quinnen Williams last year. And I think Ed's rookie season speaks for itself. And on the flip side, I thought, I knew the character risk, and I did bump him down at the end, but I thought Ja'Kai Polite was well worth the risk, and he was not at all. It was a huge miss from me. So I enjoyed that, learning from your mistakes or taking swings to the fences. And on the media side, there might not be the adrenaline of a draft room, but I still enjoy the entire process as a whole, interacting with how many diehard, not just Jet fans, but diehard draft fans there are in the world today. And I fully love my job. So I'm glad you asked, because it's been so much fun, and I think for me it's even more exciting that this space grows every single year, and I think the audience this year more than ever is going to be tremendous for the NFL draft.
No, and the really cool thing about you guys is you keep it real, you keep it honest, and you stand by your stuff. It's like it's always substantiated, but it's like you stand by your word, you give fair analysis, you give what you know, and that's it. It's like there's no fluff. You know what I mean? Like some guys try to be too much or show too much. It's like you keep it real, and then anybody that's followed you, they seem like you've just worked your ass off to climb the ranks. Like you just hard work, putting your time in, and then it just takes off. And it's so cool to see. Now, the one question we get a lot, and I have no idea because I just like watching football, is a lot of our callers love the draft, man. And they're always like, oh, I do this. What is the best way for somebody to, if they want to be like a draft analyst, how do they get started? Like, what do they do?
It depends what you want to be involved in, right? If you want to ultimately scout for a team, you need to volunteer at your college and try to be a GA and build connections and eventually get an internship in a scouting department. And that's something you could do at the high school level. It's something you could do at the college level, D1, D2, D3, or hopefully something that you get an opportunity to do at the NFL level. And that's, you look at a guy like, Brandon Beane is somebody that was on the communications side interning for the Panthers, found a way into the scouting side as an intern and climbed all the way up to assistant GM in Carolina. Now the guy is sitting in the chair for the Bills doing a tremendous job. So that's the traditional way. Now, what I do in the media is a little different. You need to find what you like, right? Whether that's analytics, whether that's rankings, whether that's entertainment. There's so many different ways to go. Like Kyle Brandt on NFL Network is a great entertainer, while Daniel Jeremiah is a phenomenal draft analyst, doing rankings, writing mock drafts, giving some insider stuff. And, you have to find your lane of what you like. I think for me I like a little bit of everything, right? I like to write, I like to do rankings, I really like to do podcasts and shows, and being on camera or speaking on the radio or speaking on podcasts, because I think I can emphasize my points a little better like that. And you need to build your brand to build your audience. And, you need to find a reason why people go to you for things. I think for me, the entry point was that there wasn't a lot of people doing Jets draft stuff, and I lived and breathed that, as you know from talking to me over the years, Tyson, and I got an opportunity to do it from a national perspective at Bleacher Report, which is incredible, and I love doing it from that, because now it's not the Jets, it's all of the teams, but I still enjoy the Jets side of it. So, to get into it, there's a lot of different avenues you could take. I think, number one, busting your ass and making good content will always defeat everything else. There's no shortcuts. But I do think the networking side of it, and I think just offering a perspective that you're passionate about, that's what I always tell college kids that I talk to. I'm like, just, find a side of it that you like. Do you like interviewing players? Do you like doing film evaluations? Are you, what do you enjoy the most? And honestly, for me, I think it's a little bit of everything, and you just need a reason why people want to hear your voice on topics. So it's, just honestly, just be true to yourself and what you enjoy, and I think that shows up on the pen and paper or in your words.
Yeah, no doubt. I always say it's like good content and consistency. Just be consistent. Like, don't vanish for like 3 months and come back and like, oh, here I am again and stuff like that. Now, this is one thing I've been dying to ask you, because I struggle with this big time. You interview a ton of players, dude, especially draft guys and pro players. Is it hard to evaluate them harshly after you interview them, especially if it's a good interview where you're like, oh, this guy's really cool, he gave us really good stuff? Is it hard to, after the fact, start, like, not ripping them, but criticizing them?
It can be very hard. And, it's a great question, because it's something that, let's be real, I think the first time I started interviewing players was 2017. So I was, 25, 24 years old. Yeah, I think I was 24. And at the time I was doing my first interviews, and let's be real, it's a little overwhelming. You're like, holy shit, I got to talk to so-and-so, and, and then you never want to publicly rip them, especially if they start to follow you or things like that. But you also need to be fair. I will never boost up a player just because he gave me good content, while I'll also never bring a player down if the interview was boring or he didn't want to do it, or you need to be true. Now, I'll say this, character matters for prospects, right? Like, if a guy, if the character is different from being good at interviews or not, but that stuff does matter. But I think, no, you need to just keep it, shoot it straight. I think that's something. And another thing I try to avoid on Twitter especially is I don't try to be overly negative about prospects. Like, somebody asked me my opinion, like, hey, why do you have, Grant Delpit at 40th overall now after he was a first rounder? I'll say, well, he didn't tackle very well this year, and he wasn't the playmaker we saw as an underclassman and all those things. Like, I'll be honest of why, but I don't feel the need to clip out a play and embarrass a guy, cherry pick his weaknesses. I think, there's guys that they love to do that, and that's their brand, and that's fine with me. I'll never really go down that lane.
Yeah, that's to be honest with you, that's the biggest challenge I have is we'll get all the players on. It's like, listen, a lot of them, like, then they make time for us at 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. It's like, all right, we really appreciate it. Then we'll talk to them afterwards, and you get kind of like a friendship where it's like, listen, like, we're not going to, like, we appreciate your time. We'll promote your charity or your event, whatever it is. And then it's like, you guarantee it, like 3 or 4 weeks later, something bad happens. You're like, oh. It's like, you try to you got to mention that things went wrong, but you don't want to, it's like, it's just such a fine line, man, where it's just like the human part of you kind of kicks in a little bit, and you're like, how the hell do you handle this? You know what I mean?
It's natural. It's absolutely natural, and it's a part of it that you need to learn how to handle, and you don't learn it beforehand, and you don't fix it right after. It's really, you learn as you go of how to get better with that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's driving me crazy for years, dude. It's just like, and then it's exactly how you say it, too. Like, everything goes well, they follow you, and then I guarantee it's like 3 weeks later, something goes wrong. You're like, oh, and your Twitter timeline's a mess, and it's just like, this is brutal. The only part I don't like about it. But, Connor, first of all, thank you for all your time, man. It's 45 minutes on a Saturday night, so definitely appreciate that. If somebody's not following you, which is, I find it hard to believe, what is the best way to follow you for all your content?
Yeah, at Connor J. Rogers on Twitter. I mean, everything is right there. I'll be posting rankings at the beginning of this week, top 200 players for the draft. Bleacher Report, the Bleacher Report app. We have live shows every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We will be live on the Bleacher Report app for the entire draft in the app and on YouTube. So if people want to watch that, I'm biased. I think we're better than the networks. I think it's all football. I think it's all analysis, and I think we shoot it straight. So you can have both on at once, whether it's your laptop, phone, tablet, whatever you want, and smart TV, and then you could also have them on the network, so you could make your choice. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So it's very easy to stick with my stuff these days, I think.
Yeah, you're everywhere, man. I love all your stuff. And you got to make us one promise, man. After this draft and chaos is over, you got to come on our show on a Tuesday night and break it all down for us, because we're going to have a million questions for you.
Oh, without a doubt. I enjoy that almost even more than the pre-draft stuff, because then we get to actually talk about the players, the fits of the team. I think everybody will be excited, which is always a nice change of pace after a long, dreary off season. So you guys, you got it whenever you want.
Connor, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Tyson. Good luck. Enjoy the draft, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Oh, most definitely. Talk to you later. All right, that was Connor Rogers, Stick to Football podcast, excellent analyst, excellent Jets fan. Make sure you're following him. Us at Talk Jets Radio on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Let's Talk Jets Radio. We appreciate all the follows, we appreciate all the listens, and we'll talk to you next time.